Greetings. Today we're going to get into chapter 8 of Abeni's song, written by Djeli Clark, Talking to Pots. So she went through the actual ordeal of going through the forest in the middle of the night and being attacked by forest creatures and being saved once again by the old woman, and learning that the old woman didn't come to kidnap her or snatch her away or do evil things to her, but she actually came to save at least one person's life, a child's life, and bring that child up out of that trauma and have that child be a help to her in her home, but to also preserve the village so it wasn't completely lost, so all the people weren't completely just snatched away from it. And it just reminds me of the things that really happened to those people who were living their lives to the fullest, structured lives, deep in the bush, deep in the forest. And then because people were greedy and selfish and power hungry, they felt like it was their right to just come and save people from thinking differently than they do and snatching up people to live according to their agenda, to their idea of what the world should be like, just one way. It may not have happened like it did in this fantasy book, but it happened in real life, and it's still happening now. But back to the book. So yeah, chapter 8, Talking to Pots. We're going to get into how this house that the old woman has is structured. Like, what goes on in the house for real. Now that Abeni knows her village is gone and she has to go back home with the old woman, because what else is there, So, and the house is just, all those doors, all those cosmic gateways, so to speak, and all those treasures she has in the house. And they're specifically cultural, like the masks and the statues and what else was behind the doors? The gourds and just all kind of treasures, endless treasures. It's like the old woman has the culture there fully. Let's get into it. Chapter 8, Talking to Pots. Wake up. Abeni's eyes flew open with a start. She had been having the most pleasant sleep she'd had in a long while. No burning village. No frightening women with spears and swords. Closing her eyes, she tried to return. A rough shake jolted her back awake. Uncurling, she turned around to squint at her tormentor. Auntie Asha stared back, bending close. "What is it?" Abeni asked sleepily. "Time to wake up," Auntie Asha retorted. Abeni eyed the window where only faint sunlight peeked in. It couldn't have been much past dawn. "It's too early," she whined. "I'm not ready yet." Turning about, she lay back down to sleep. Her eyes had barely closed before she was attacked by her blanket. The cloth came alive, wrapping about her tight. She yelped as it tugged her hard from bed, dropping her onto the floor with a thud. Struggling to untangle herself from the deranged fabric, she looked up to find Auntie Asha glowering down, hands balled into fists on her hips. "Time to wake up," she repeated slowly. "But I'm still tired," Abeni protested, pushing away the blanket. We were out all day. It wasn't an exaggeration. They hadn't returned from her village until close to nightfall. After eating and a bath, she had stumbled into bed and fallen right asleep. All the more reason not to squander this one, Auntie Asha replied. Abeni frowned at the logic. I'm still growing, you know. I need my rest. That earned her a humph. Growing girls also need not spend their days lying in bed. I allowed it when you first arrived, but time enough has passed. There's work to do. Work? No one had said anything about work. Yes, work, the older woman repeated, meeting her puzzled stare. Or did you think your food, water, and clothes just appear by magic? Abeni said nothing. Actually, that was exactly what she thought. Well, it comes from work, Auntie Asha lectured, wagging a finger. And it's time you started doing some. It will be good for you, both in body and spirit. Abeni muttered grumpily. She hated when grown-ups made you do chores for them and then said it would be good for you. So that's why you brought me here? To be your servant? Auntie Asha laughed so hard, the wrinkles on her skin grew smooth. A servant knows how to clean, to cook, to spin cloth, to plant. Which of those can you do? When Abeni didn't answer, she laughed again as if it was the funniest thing she'd ever heard. There's food outside, and from now on it won't stay warm. If you want to eat, I suggest you hurry and stop your pouting. Abeni glared at the older woman's back as she left the room. I'm not pouting, she called. That's just how my lips are. She wasn't enjoying this turn of events at all, but there seemed little she could do about it. Narrowing her eyes at the blanket, she gave it a smack. Traitor! Then she yelped again as it smacked her back. After losing a second fight with the blanket, she washed up, got dressed, and left the house to meet Auntie Asha out front. Wooden bowls of food were waiting. Hot porridge doused with honey, fresh-cut fruit, and small rounded piece of sweetened bread. She ate up all that she could and washed it down with a cool tea brewed with red leaves. Finishing, she sat back and gazed out across the garden, letting her eyes wander to the house and back again. This isn't going to be so bad, she thought encouragingly. How much work could there be for one old woman in this place? It turned out the answer was a lot. Her first task was washing their bowls. To do this, she had to get fresh water. That meant a long trek to a forest stream with a large jar. The walk itself was difficult, and she could barely remember the old woman's directions, which consisted of look for a green bush here or a tall tree there. The forest by day wasn't like at night, and she wasn't going far, but it was still filled with cries and hoots that made her jump. Things buzzed in her ears, and at least once she walked through a cobweb so big it covered her hair and face, and she tried not to think of the spider large enough to make it. By the time she reached the stream, she panted from the effort and was itchy and sweaty besides. Getting the water back was another headache. Seeing older girls and women in her village balancing jars atop their heads was common enough, but it turned out to be much harder than it looked. She sloshed water everywhere in her first attempt, getting drenched in the process. When she finally managed to get the jar back half full, she found 6 more, empty and waiting. Water carrying took up most of the morning. By the time it was done, she was already tired and soaked besides. But there was more work waiting, lifting heavy rocks in the garden and pulling up unwanted plants. When she was done, her clothes and skin were dry, but caked with dirt. She didn't even want to imagine how she smelled. And still there was more. She helped grind grain, dry leaves, and collect wood for the cooking fire. She even had to scale and clean fish, which helped her appreciate Foamy's strong dislike. Fish guts smelled awful. Blech. When the day ended and night came, Abeni ate a meal of peppery fish she helped prepare, washed the sweat and grime from her skin, and then collapsed, face first, into her bed where she promptly fell asleep. Her last wish before drifting off was that hopefully tomorrow wouldn't be as bad, but it was. So was the day after that, and the ones after that. Every morning she got up as the sun rose. If she didn't, her fussy blanket would throw her from the bed. She tried to fight it several more times, the two of them circling one another, its ends knotting into little blanket fists, and she lost each time. The thing took its job very seriously. She ate and then set about her chores. She helped in the garden. She helped fish. She helped beat and pound yam, which wasn't at all fun anymore. No matter how much she did, it seemed there was always more work. And the old woman was not the best living companion. Most times, she just gave orders or scolded when something was done wrong. She wasn't mean exactly. She just didn't seem to be one for idle talk or play. More than once, Abeni had tried to start a conversation, but she only got short responses and to concentrate on your work. The worst of it was the house. "You want me to clean the rooms?" Abeni asked one morning. "That's what I said," Auntie Asha replied. She sat in front of her house, weaving together a basket of long brown reeds, not bothering to look up. "Are you sure I should go inside them?" "You had no problem going inside before." Benny's eyes rounded. So she knew about her earlier exploring. Of course she did. "They're not all safe. Then you'd best be careful." Benny glanced to the house, uncertain. "How many rooms in there?" "Just as many rooms as are needed," Auntie Asha answered. Benny frowned slightly. Who knew what that meant? The old woman was especially short on talk when it came to magic. She performed very little of it in front of Abeni now and was reluctant to explain other things, like her bizarre house. Grunting in resignation, Abeni trudged inside. As usual, she didn't recognize any of the doors. They came and went by the day. There was no way to tell what lay behind each, and picking one was just a matter of choice. She remembered, however, that the room with all the cold had been bright and yellow and round. Maybe the prettier doors were the more dangerous ones, she pondered. It would be just like this house to do that. Singling out the drabbest door she could find, she walked up and put a hand to the rough brown wood before gingerly pushing it open, and gasped. The room was filled with drums. Endless drums. Drums in every shape and size, sitting about or all stacked one atop the other. Round drums and long drums, and some that looked like you should hold them in your hand or slung over your shoulder. She walked past a drum so big, she craned her neck to look up at it, and still she couldn't see the top. They were all covered in dust, and she thought that they might have been here for some time. "What am I supposed to do with all of you?" she asked aloud, then stopped as her foot struck something. She looked down to find a large clay jug filled with soapy water. Next to it was a thick white cloth, not very subtle. Sighing, she picked the cloth up, looking around again at all the dust-covered drums. This will probably take all day, she muttered. It took 3 long days, and that was just the beginning. The next room she encountered was overflowing with giant, hollowed-out gourds so large she could easily fit inside. She wiped them clean, then rolled them out on their bulbous bodies to be arranged neatly. Cleaning the rooms always took a long time. If she didn't finish in one day, it would still be waiting there the next, not disappearing until she was done. Or the room decided she was done. Then there would be another one waiting, with more odd things in need of cleaning or rearranging or tidying. It was tiring work, but at least alone she had time to think, without the old woman's commands or fussing. Her thoughts often went to home, what had once been home anyway. When she was with the old woman, she tried her best to learn more about this witch priest and his war. She especially wanted to know about the ghost ships and the man with the goat horn mask, but Auntie Asha avoided all such talk, often changing the subject or giving curt answers as if she'd revealed more than enough already. It left Abeni frustrated, but becoming angry or throwing a tantrum wouldn't help. She and the old woman were past that, so she settled on being patient and determined to learn what she could. Sometimes at night, when she hadn't yet fallen asleep and the moving images on her wall no longer amused her, she reached into her bag and took out the cloth she'd brought back from her village. The banner with the orange flame of the witch priest. She didn't know what she was looking for, but she stared at it, wishing it would give up its secrets. Mostly, though, the sight of it left her cold and brought fitful dreams. It was on a day after one such restless night that she found the sword. The door had appeared that morning, a thing of iron with sharp edges. Behind it was a room filled with weapons. Many were so sharp and dangerous looking she had to be careful not to cut herself. The cloth had been waiting too, this time with some white cream in a small bowl. Her task was to shine and polish each weapon, and from the amount of them she guessed she'd be doing so well into nightfall. It was in the middle of her cleaning that she saw the sword. It was short and small, with a dark, sharp, and pointed blade. She picked it up, amazed at how light it was. Many of the weapons here she could barely lift. This one she could hoist above her head. She recalled her father, how good he had been with a sword, and her mother standing with a sword raised up to the fierce storm woman. She got the sudden impression that this room had been meant for her. Maybe all her troubled thoughts the previous night had made it appear. Without giving it a second thought, she knew then she was going to take the sword. Sneaking it into her room wasn't hard, and she slid it behind her bed where no one would look. She fell asleep staring at it, running a finger carefully along the dark blade. That night, she dreamt of her village and that terrible day. She'd had this dream many times before, but this time was different. This time, she was there, older and stronger. She wielded a sword, the same one she'd stolen, against the storm woman with no color, and she won. With her mother and father beside her, they fought off the remaining storm women, cutting their cursed ropes and sending them fleeing. She confronted the man in the mask of goat horns, slicing his flute in two and rescuing her friends. It was the best dream she'd ever had. When Abeni woke the next morning, memories of it flittered in her head. She knew then why she'd taken the sword, why the room had appeared. It was too late to save her village, but she refused to believe it was too late to save her family and friends. Somehow, someday, she would find them again. She would rescue them from ghost ships and storm women and men with cursed flutes, but she'd have to be strong, much stronger than she was now. That morning, just before the sun rose, she went outside with the sword. Standing in the back of the house, she began to practice. She didn't think she even knew what she was doing. She'd never paid much attention to her father or uncle as they sparred, but she practiced anyway, depending on her memory and what seemed right. She especially thought of her mother, the way she had stood holding that sword, the way she wielded it. One day she'd be able to do that. She practiced with the sword whenever she got a free moment, when the old woman had gone out or had left her to her own designs. Once, she found a room filled with nothing but mirrors. She spent most of the day practicing in front of them, watching her reflection from every angle. Suddenly, her daily tasks seemed less dull. Between the water carrying and grain grinding and endless rooms in need of cleaning, practicing with the sword had given her something to focus on, something that was all hers. Holding it made her feel powerful, brave, not a girl who cowered at storm women with fire in their eyes or fled before bat riders swooping through the skies. She was a hero with the sword, like in her dreams. Wherever her friends and family had been stolen to, she'd find them. She'd bring them back. Still, she wasn't naive. Taking on a whole army of those storm women might work in a dream, but this was real life. She was going to need more than a sword. She would need something powerful, something strong. She would need magic, and she knew just the person to teach her. One day, as she and the old woman sat in the early morning shelling peas on straw mats in the middle of the garden, she decided to bring it up. They were plucking the peas from green pods and dropping them into a large bowl. She'd practiced how she would go about her question. All she'd been waiting for was the right moment. "Auntie Asha," she began, "I was thinking." The older woman continued her work, not looking up. Knowing this was just her way, Abeni continued, "I've been doing all this work, and it takes me so long. The rooms alone can take days. I was thinking how much easier it could be." "Yes," Auntie Asha said, eyes on her peas. "How much faster it could be if you didn't sit about staring at nothing, dreaming while awake." Abeni blinked. She didn't know the old woman had even noticed. "Well, yes, but I was thinking you could help by teaching me." "There's only so much instruction for sweeping or cleaning." "No, I don't mean that. I meant..." She held her breath. "Magic." The old woman's hands stopped their work, going still. She looked up, her black eyes unblinking. Abeni swallowed, meeting that gaze. A part of her wanted to say never mind and return to shelling peas, but she needed this, not just for herself, but for her village. It was now or never. "What I was thinking, saying, if you could teach me magic, I could get my work done more quickly," she swallowed again. "You want to learn magic," Auntie Asha said finally, "to help with your chores." Abeni nodded. Her heart thumped hopefully. Maybe she'd made her case well after all. "And to think," Auntie Asha continued in a rueful tone, "so many children must complete chores each day without a bit of magic to help. How terrible for them." Abeni was set to nod again until she read the old woman's blank stare. This wasn't sympathy. She was mocking her, making fun of her request. Hope faded, then fled as Auntie Asha leaned closer, those dark eyes scrutinizing as if she could see right through her. Now, what would a girl like you possibly want with magic? A girl who, when I found her, feared magic. Certainly not just to do her chores. That would be lazy. And she's not lazy, is she? No. Her mind is forever working at things. Maybe she needs magic for something else. Maybe for the same reason she thinks she needs to steal a sword. Abeni's eyes widened. If she hadn't been sitting down, she would have jumped back. She had done her best to keep her sword practicing secret. Auntie Asha's voice hardened to stone. Maybe the girl thinks she can learn magic and how to swing a sword and then go out chasing after ghost ships and storm women and men in goat horn masks. Could that be it? When Abeni didn't answer, she flared her nostrils in an angry snort. Magic! Cha! What a day that would be when I teach magic to a girl who dreams of being a hero. Teach you just enough to end up in more trouble than you can handle. This is the last I want to hear about teaching you any magic. The very last. Abeni turned her eyes downward, her face burning with embarrassment. She didn't answer back. She just kept her eyes on her hands as they began to shell peas again. In silence. The next day she found herself cleaning out a new room, this one filled with feathers of every color imaginable, spotted or striped or in bright hues. Some were small enough to fit in the palm of her hand. Others were so large she couldn't imagine the bird they came from, and didn't want to imagine either. She sorted and arranged them, placing the smaller ones into wide woven baskets and laying the larger ones on the floor. When she had finished, she was exhausted and covered in feathery bits that stuck all over. She walked to the back of the house where a plate of covered food, white fufu balls with a spicy melon soup, waited. The old woman had left earlier that morning, off on one of the forest hunts she took from time to time, leaving Abeni up to her waist in feathers. She sat, glumly eating her food, picking feather bits out of her hair and grimacing when a few made it onto her tongue. Auntie Asha's refusal to teach her magic had robbed her of her fire. She hadn't even bothered to practice her swordplay that morning. Without magic, her plans seemed empty dreams. How would she fight women who wielded flaming knives and men with cursed flutes with her one sword? She scowled, biting down hard on a fufu ball and chewing furiously. Did that old woman expect her to stay here for the rest of her life? Cleaning endless rooms and pulling weeds, surrounded by magic she couldn't touch? A stray feather floated up from her clothes to land on her cheek. She swiped at it angrily. In her dark mood, she almost didn't hear her name being called. Abeni. She turned around, stopping her chewing, and looked about behind the house. No one was there. The garden was empty, and that hadn't sounded like the whispering grass stalks. Oh, that was just perfect, she thought glumly. Now she was hearing things. All this work was making her crazy. Abeni. She stood up now, putting her food down. Okay, that hadn't been her imagination. Auntie Asha? No answer. It hadn't sounded like the old woman anyway. Over here, Abeni. You have to look for us. Want to find us. She turned, following the call, and stopped in surprise. There was a door. It was tall and made of plain-looking wood, the rough surface painted white with red symbols right out in the middle of the garden. Only she'd never seen a door that wasn't in the house before. But why should that surprise you, she thought. If rooms in this strange place can come and go as they please, why not out here? But why had it appeared now? And why was it calling her? Come find out. Abeni's eyes rose. Abeni's eyebrows rose. She hadn't asked that aloud. Unable to resist, she set down her food and took cautious steps towards the door. She made a full circle around it, finding the same white paint and odd symbols on the opposite side. An idle thought came to her. The door wasn't attached to anything, just a bordering red frame. If she walked through it, wouldn't she just come out on the other side? Right here in the garden? Only one way to find out, she mused. Gingerly, she lifted a hand to push the door open. Just a bit. But before she'd even touched the wood, it cracked open on its own. She jerked her fingers back. None of the other doors had ever done that before. They'd never called her either. Licking her lips nervously, she dared a peek inside. But she couldn't make out more than shadows. Gathering up her courage, she first poked a head inside, then followed with her whole body, gaping at what she found. Behind the door, standing impossibly in the middle of the garden, there was a room. It was much like the others she'd become used to cleaning, though perhaps larger than any of them. It was dark inside, but she could see it filled with the most unexpected things yet. Pots. Every kind of pot she could think of. Giant pots and little pots. Round pots and skinny pots. Some were painted in vibrant colors. Others were plain, dull clay. There were so many different kinds, she couldn't describe them all. They sat everywhere, upright or on their sides, all atop each other in great big heaps like small hills. As she stood staring, the strange voice came again. Wouldn't you like to see us, Abeni? Wouldn't you like to do some magic? Abeni's heart leapt at the question. Yes, she answered, uncertain who she was talking to. Then we'll teach you. Just repeat after us. Reveal. So Abeni's life with the old woman begins, and it's nothing like she thought it was going to be, assumed it was going to be, expected it to be, because she was basing a lot of what she thought it was going to be on magic. That same magic that she thought was evil in a lot of ways and just wrong, although she accepted the magic when it was beneficial for her, when it kept her food warm, when it gave her clean clothes and clean water to wash with, and a nice clean bed to sleep in, and rooms to explore, and a big old house to live in, and, you know, all that good stuff. But she never attributed it to the work that the old woman was putting into it. Clearly, it wasn't just simple. She saw the old woman pushing the wheelbarrow full of rocks. If everything was magic, the old woman would never be pushing the rocks herself. So, but she's a child. She's 12. So, you know, her ideas about what it was going to be like. I guess she thought she was going to just sleep and eat and daydream the rest of the time she was there. But it got real. She had to do work. She had to do her share. She had to reciprocate. She had to put in. 12 years old, you're old enough to do your chores. Everybody got chores. Everybody needs to be cleaning up, helping around the house, helping around wherever they are. Everybody. As soon as you're big enough to pick up stuff, if you can drop it, you can pick it up. So that was something she was being taught. And it's not like she didn't come from a village where they did that, but because she was still learning to respect the old woman, she had to and she was a bit spoiled, to be honest. The old woman spoiled her, but only out of trying to help her heal. And, because she had been through a lot. That was a really traumatic situation. But you can't sit in your trauma forever and just, you gotta begin a new life after it. And that's what she found when she found the sword. A new life based on a new hope. Like that sword lit a fire in her. The hope that she could save her family. That purpose, it gave her the work she did every day meaning. Like all of that going back and forth, bringing the water, cooking, cleaning, she needed to know all those things. That helped build up her body, her mind, her spirit. That work was good for her. She didn't see it at first. She saw it as serving the old woman. But when she saw it as a bigger picture, when she had a bigger reason, her why, then it became, more inspiring. But the old woman was like, no, I ain't give you no magic. You're irresponsible. Like people see magic, or what's another word for magic? Well, we'll just leave it at that right now. But people see things, well, I'll say it, like spiritual things, like wanting things to just pop up without doing the work. But just, you got to give something to get something. Reciprocity in all relationships, even the relationship with magic. But she's not hearing the old woman. The old woman knows that the magic she has is powerful, that Abeni is just 12. She's just a child, and she's impulsive with it. And if she teaches her too much powerful magic, what if she just runs out there? And she knows what Abeni's going to do. At her age, she's experienced enough people, enough situations to read what the child's going to do. So she refuses it, which of course is discouraging. And then the magic pots call her. Now, we know this is not going to end well, right? Anytime magic pots are calling you and you have no idea how to deal with it, it's probably a good idea not to, go too far with stuff that you really don't know much about. On your own, at least. Maybe she could have just considered trying to be really good at her work and then showing the old woman maturity. And then maybe she would have shown her that way. But no. Abeni's going to listen to the pots, the magic door she found in the middle of the garden. Now, she should have known that was going to be too much for her to handle. But let's see what happens. Reveal? Abeni asked with a frown. That didn't sound like much. You'll have to do better than that. With magic, you have to mean it. Say it with your very heart. Now, reveal. Oh, Abeni said, abashed. She cleared her throat. Reveal! Something flickered before her eyes before returning to darkness. Then the entire room burst into brilliance. Abeni let out a small squeak. Had she just done magic? A tingle of excitement ran through her. She had just done magic. With the light, she now realized how big the room truly was. It went on, so that she couldn't even see an end. And that wasn't all. A low humming had begun, growing louder by the moment. The humming was made up of voices, dozens, perhaps hundreds of voices, all talking at once. The voices were coming from the pots. They were talking. These pots were alive. They moved about, twisting and jostling each other. Some yelled, some whispered, some laughed. A few even sang. Excited at this new discovery, she tried talking back. Excuse me, she began. You're excused, one retorted. Several pots howled in laughter. Abeni frowned. That wasn't very nice. I just wanted to know. I just wanted to know. Some pots mocked in unison. Okay, this was getting annoying. What are you? She asked. What do we look like? One shot back. We're pots. What are you? I'm a girl, she replied indignantly, and I've never seen talking pots before. Well, we've never seen a talking girl before. Abeni gritted her teeth. This rudeness really wasn't necessary. Did you call me? She asked. I heard a voice. Was that you? Yes, but you called us first, a pot said. Me? How did I call you? I wish I knew magic, several mocked. I wish I didn't have all these chores. I wish I was big and strong. Wah, wah, wah. You called us up with all that sitting around and moping, you great big lump. We answered back so you'd shut up. Abeni's cheeks heated. She wasn't moping. But where'd you come from? I've never seen this place. It's magic, you dolt, just like us. You can't see it unless you're looking. Abeni supposed that made sense. As much sense as talking pots. She shook her head. This place had a surprise around every corner, and there were many corners. Over here, Abeni, one of the pots called. She looked down to where a shallow bowl like a basin sat. Why don't you let me show you what I can do? Touch my side and say, reveal. She reached a hand down, then hesitated, thinking of Auntie Asha. If the old woman had hidden this room away, it was probably for a good reason. She wouldn't look kindly on Abeni, even being in here, much less touching her magic pots. I don't know. Auntie Asha might not like it. A roar of angry cries rose from the pots that made Abeni jump. That old tortoise, dried up hag. We are not afraid of her. She's not the boss of us. They went on that way for a good while, saying the most awful things. Just touch my side, Abeni, the shallow bowl urged. It spoke with a pleasant voice, not rude like the others. I want to show you something. Asha doesn't need to know. Abeni bit her lip. She did want to learn magic, didn't she? This pot just wanted to show her something. What harm could there be in that? Reaching a hand to the bowl again, she touched its side with her forefinger, uttered the magic word. Reveal! The bowl quickly filled with liquid. It looked like milk but shined bright with light. Abeni leaned in and gazed down in wonder as images began to show across the glowing surface. A shadow that moved in the sky. A girl with orange eyes, like a cat. And another with black eyes who disappeared in a blink of pink mist. A strange village with tired grown-ups walking towards a pit at the crack of a whip. A dark red stone that pulsed and beat like a living heart. And monsters behind masks of wood and iron with mouths that roared. She reared back as the monsters rippled away and a new image came. She gasped. She was staring at herself, but bigger and stronger. There was a sword in her hand, and she held it high as if to say nothing could frighten or challenge her again. She leaned in to see more of the image, but it too rippled away and was replaced by another. It was of a little girl. She looked familiar somehow, although Abeni was almost certain they hadn't met before. As if the girl could see out of the bowl, she suddenly looked up with dark, piercing eyes above a bright smile and spoke. Hello, little rain-bringer. Abeni jumped back. The girl vanished and was soon replaced by more images, so many it made her dizzy. She looked away, trying to clear her head and wondering what was that all about. Things that could be, the bowl said, reading her thoughts. Its voice became a low whisper. Watch out for shadows, Abeni. She was about to ask what that meant when a larger pot adorned in colorful beads pushed itself forward, knocking the shallow bowl to the side. The glowing waters rippled and the images disappeared, leaving behind glowing white liquid. Enough of that bore, the bigger pot said. Let me show you some real magic. Abeni hesitated, but hadn't she come this far? Touching the pot, she rubbed its side and said, Reveal. In an instant, it filled up with something, what looked like thick blue soup. What is it? She asked in wonder. Magic. The pot purred the word like a cat. This is where the old hag keeps it all, hidden away. You wanted some, didn't you? Here's your chance. Have a taste. Abeni stared into the pot. Back in her village, the local healer would make potions. She'd gotten sick and had to drink one down. It had made her better, but tasted terrible. I'm not some village healer, the pot snapped. This isn't brewed out of bitter leaves or ground up cow horns. This is magic. Pure magic. Just taste. Come on. These pots certainly were fussy, not to mention impatient. Just a taste then. She dipped the tip of her finger into the blue goop. It was very cold and she shivered. Bringing just a bit to her tongue, she licked lightly and her eyes lit up. Good, right? The pot asked. Abeni nodded vigorously. It was delicious. The most magnificent thing she'd ever tasted, like milk and flower nectar, and maybe what sunshine tasted like after a rainfall. Have some more, the pot purred. Have as much as you like. Abeni grinned, reaching a full hand in this time. She took a scoop of the cool liquid and drank it down. Every bit of her seemed to come alive, and she shuddered. The more she tasted, the more she wanted. Oh, try me, another pot urged, pushing forward. Abeni paused her drinking, her lips and mouth smeared blue. Touching the new pot, she commanded it to reveal itself. A heap of what looked like colorful stones appeared, but they were soft and squishy to the touch. She put one in her mouth and was surprised to find it sweet as melon and chewy. Another tasted like a sugar-red tamarind. She gulped it down. Try me. Abeni looked to find more pots had surrounded her on all sides, urging her to make them reveal their contents. They bustled and pushed to reach her, and she had to tell them one at a time. But she granted their wishes, saying the magic word eagerly, then stuffing her mouth with their deliciousness. Abeni, a voice came in the middle of her eating. It was the shallow bowl, its glowing waters gone still. She wondered what that tasted like. You might want to stop. Stop. She'd stuffed her mouth with some pinkish, crunchy things that squirted like liquid, like fiery honey on the inside. Why would she want to do that? If someone had told her before that magic could taste so good, she would have been eating it every day. She sat on the floor, shoving new things into her face, not stopping until she was too full to take any more. Lying back, she rubbed her swollen belly as more pots clamored for her attention. Give me a moment, she muttered tiredly. I'll get to the rest of you. Just need to... Abeni sat right up. That hiccup was so strong it made her jump. She put a hand to her chest. Maybe she had eaten too fast. Leaning back, she tried to get comfortable again, but couldn't. What was she sitting on? Looking down, she found something thick and long, poking out from beneath her dress. It was covered in green scales and had a pointed end. Oh, she thought absently, just her tail. She bolted straight to her feet. Her tail? She spun in a circle, frantically trying to see the thing. She could feel it at her back, swishing and curling about. A tail! How had it gotten there? Hip! She covered her mouth with a hand. That hiccup had made her feel funny. She noticed the pots were no longer calling to her. Instead, they giggled, as if at some joke. When she turned to them, they only laughed louder. What was so funny? Abeni. It was the shallow bowl again. You might want to take a look at yourself. Frowning, she leaned her head over the milk-white waters. There were no images this time, just her reflection. She squealed at seeing two furry things on either side of her head. She squealed again when her fingers touched them. Ears, long and covered in gray fur. She had grown rabbit ears. Don't panic, she told herself. Don't panic. There had to be a perfectly reasonable explanation. She glanced to the pots and their emptied contents. Magic. More strong hiccups made her double over, shuddering. When she looked back up at her reflection, she had grown a pair of curving horns, white and streaked with brown like a cow's, and her forearms were covered in shaggy white dog hair. Okay, she was panicking. She was definitely panicking. She tried to run and turn from the room and away from these crazy pots, but she had taken only a few steps when she tripped. She would have fallen flat on her face if she hadn't caught herself. Pushing up with the flat of her palms, she looked at her feet, and it was little wonder. One was a bird's foot, all skinny with 4 claws. The other ended in a black hoof. Not knowing what else to do, she sat down and was racked by constant hiccups, which caused new things to grow or change upon her. The pots roared their laughter at each one. It was in the middle of her despair that the door to the odd room burst open. Standing there was Auntie Asha. The old woman somehow seemed taller than usual, filling up the doorframe. Her dark eyes shined as she glared across the room. As one, the many pots shrank back, some of them shrieking, the smaller ones trying to hide. When that dark gaze fell over her, Abeni cowered too. She must have looked a sight. By now having grown a bushy lion's mane and a twitching nose like a baby elephant. But the old woman's anger seemed to melt away, turning to a look of concern. Walking over, she bent down and with surprising strength lifted Abeni into her arms, taking care to be gentle with her tail. As they neared the door frame, she turned a parting glare on the pots. Do not think I will not deal with all of you later, she said coldly. The pots wailed. Soon an argument erupted as they all turned to blame each other. The old woman left them there, stepping through the door to outside. Abeni was surprised to find the sun sat low and lazy on the horizon. It was almost sunset. How long had she been in there? Auntie Asha took her to the house and set her down in her bed. She disappeared for a moment, then returned with a small wooden cup and a large clay bowl. In the cup was a green liquid that made Abeni's elephant nose wrinkle. It smelled horrible. You'll need to drink this and quick, Auntie Asha instructed. She pressed the cup forward. Unless you want to stay like this forever. That was all Abeni needed to hear. With the old woman's help, she held up her elephant nose and drank down the green liquid. Blech! It tasted even worse than it smelled. Good, Auntie Asha nodded, accepting the drained cup. Now the bowl. Abeni looked to the empty bowl, wondering what she was to do with it. And then her stomach made a terrible sound, a deep gurgling that roiled her belly. She grabbed the bowl hanging her head over it just in time as everything came up in a rush, a rainbow of colors, whole stones and chewed up bits of unrecognizable things. She panted when it ended, wiping at her mouth. Then she noticed her nose, wrinkling it in relief. It was hers again. Looking to her arm, she found the fur was gone. She was about to cheer when she noticed her feet, still a chicken foot and a hoof. Her stomach grumbled noisily. You swallowed a lot of magic, Auntie Asha said. Her tone wasn't angry, but it held a scolding note. You are about to learn that all magic comes with a cost. It will be a long evening. Abeni only partly heard. Her head was once again over the bowl, her belly heaving. It was well after nightfall when she finished emptying her stomach. It had been harrowing, but she was herself again. No more tail, rabbit ears, or anything else. Certain that nothing else was coming up, she pushed the bowl away and sat back, exhausted. Auntie Asha, who had stayed with her the whole time, handed over a cup. Abeni took it, peering inside hesitantly. Just water, the old woman assured her. Thank you, Abeni said, taking a sip. Or at least that's what she intended to say, only it didn't sound like that. She was speaking words she'd never heard before, in another language. She could tell what they meant. She just didn't know why she was saying them. Looking up, she found Auntie Asha appeared just as confused. What was that? Abeni asked. These were new words, as unfamiliar as the last. The old woman leaned close from where she sat on the bed's edge to place a palm to her forehead, bending low to meet her at eye level. Do you understand me? She asked in some odd language. Abeni nodded. Like before, the words were nothing she'd ever heard, but she could understand them all the same. Tell me all that the pots made you eat, Auntie Asha said. Leave nothing out. Abeni did so. The words that tumbled from her lips were so unfamiliar, she didn't know her mouth could make those sounds. Auntie Asha said when she'd finished. I believe I know the problem. Abeni breathed a sigh of relief. You understand me then? I speak many tongues. Now it seems so do you. You swallowed a prattle stone. Abeni stared blankly. A prattle what? Prattle stones form in the bellies of giant fish that swim the seas of the world, the old woman explained. Holding one in your mouth allows you to speak and understand many tongues. It seems swallowing one whole has a lingering effect. Abeni grimaced, feeling queasy again. She had swallowed something that had grown in a giant fish's belly. Disgusting. Can you get it out of me? Auntie Asha shook her head. I wish I could. A good paddlestone is a rare thing, but all that's going to come up has done so. She pointed to the bucket full of colorful goop. That paddlestone seems to have taken a liking to you. Out of one belly and into another, I suppose. But I don't want it in there, Abeni whined. She didn't like the idea of some magic rock making a home in her stomach. I want to talk normal again. The old woman clucked her tongue, rolling her eyes. Cha! Do young people ever listen? You can speak any tongue you wish, silly girl. Just stop and think before you talk. What a day it would be if everyone did so now and again. Abeni wasn't sure she knew what that meant, but she tried. She thought of what she wanted to say and how she wanted to sound. It took a few wrong tries and more chiding from the old woman to concentrate, but finally she was successful. The words she spoke sounded familiar again. That's better, she said, relieved. Keep practicing, Auntie Asha urged. It will get easier with time. Hopefully you've learned not to go around talking to strange pots. Abeni nodded, rubbing her aching stomach. Why are they so mean? Auntie Asha moved to sit on a nearby stool, adjusting her shawls about her shoulders. Because I made them that way. I need them to be difficult, to keep their secrets. That's why they often speak in riddles. I'm afraid it's also made them cruel, she paused. But this is my fault, and for that, I am sorry. Abeni stared in surprise. That was unexpected. The old woman was silent for a long moment, her face drawn up. Abeni had seen that look before, on people who were trying to decide whether they should say a thing or not. It was best to keep quiet, she'd learned, and let them choose. I have a sister, the old woman said finally. She lives far from here, beyond the forest, in a valley. Much like me, she is a caretaker of a small village. Abeni's eyebrows rose. Auntie Asha had a sister? She hadn't ever thought of the old woman as even having family, but she supposed everyone had a family, even when they were stolen away. The night before I came to your village, she went on, my sister spoke to me in my dreams. Dream talking should have sounded crazy to Abeni, but this was a day when some talking pots had tricked her into eating magic, and now she had an enchanted stone in her belly, so what did she know? It had been a very long time since my sister and I had last spoken, Auntie Asha went on. I almost didn't recognize her voice. The old woman went quiet again, and a far-off look entered her eyes. What did your sister tell you? Abeni asked, genuinely curious. Auntie Asha's dark eyes focused, returning from wherever she'd gone. That the children of her village had been taken by a song, and that he was coming. Abeni's body went stiff and cold at once. The man with the flute, she whispered. The man in the mask of goat horns. The old woman nodded gravely. You heard her too, that very night. All the children of your village did. It came back to Abeni suddenly. The woman in the dream the night before Harvest Festival, the one who had been wailing and crying. He has taken the children, taken them from me, the children of night. She looked to the old woman, 100 questions forming. How? Auntie Asha shook her head, white locks swaying. I do not know. When you told me that you and all the children of your village had heard my sister's cries, I was unsure what to make of it. I still am. Perhaps, in her desperation, she sent her call far and wide so that it crept into all your dreams. Or it could be that my dream of her spilled over into all of yours. Perhaps even the flute's cursed magic played some role. She gave a frustrated grunt, throwing up her hands. Cha! As I said, I don't know. Abeni stared. Why didn't you say this when I told you what we heard that night? Auntie Asha shrugged. It would have done little more than confuse you. It's my right to be confused, Abeni protested. Her tone must have been sharper than she realized because the old woman's dark eyes narrowed, but Abeni didn't look away. Grown-ups were always hiding things and then telling you they had a good reason. I did not know at first what my sister spoke of that night, the old woman went on. So I went to that very room of pots where I keep my magic concealed. There is a basin there, filled with moon water, that allows me to glimpse things to come. Abeni nodded. I saw it, the glowing water that shows you images. This time it was Auntie Asha's eyebrows that rose. A scrying pot. It will show you tomorrow or the many tomorrows that might be. I saw, Abeni began, but the old woman held up a hand. What the waters show is for you only. But be mindful. The further away from now, the more unreliable the visions. The tomorrows you saw are not yet written. Is that why you came to our village? Because of your sister's warning? Auntie Asha's face darkened. No. Before I ever heard her call, I sensed a darkness in the forest. When I consulted the scrying pot, it showed me the fate of your village, that the darkness would consume it, that I was already too late. Abeni tried to imagine what the visions in the pot must have showed Auntie Asha, and shivered again. What happened to the children of your sister's village? Does she know where the man with the flute took them? The one in the goat horn mask. Maybe we can... She trailed off at the troubled look in the old woman's eyes. We have not spoken since that night. I have called, but she does not answer. The hope Abeni had dared to let herself feel evaporated, and she sank back down. There was a long stretch of silence, so that all that could be heard was the wind blowing through trees and the early chirping and calls of night. You mean to go after them, Auntie Asha said at last. She looked at Abeni, her expression unreadable. The storm women, the ghost ships, the man in the goat horn mask. You mean to find them, and nothing I say will dissuade you. Is this true? Abeni met the old woman's gaze, which did not blink. She was surprised by the question, but those eyes seemed to demand she give an answer, so she did. Yes, I promised you I wouldn't run off again, and I won't. But I'll never stop looking for my family or my friends. Never. She meant it more than anything. The old woman released a sigh, leaning back heavily on her stool. You asked to learn magic. I didn't approve for precisely this reason. I thought keeping you busied at other tasks would stifle your desire, but I see now I was wrong. That desire only grew. How else could you have called up the door? Abeni blinked in confusion. Me? I didn't. The magic that gives the pots life felt your longing, Auntie Asha cut in. Being mischievous, they took advantage of that. That was my fault. I shouldn't have dismissed you so readily. And you need to stop keeping secrets from me, Abeni thought darkly. Wait, had the old woman just apologized? To her? That was new. The two sat in silence again for a while. The room had darkened since they'd entered, and the images on the wall now stirred to life. They told a story about a hapless girl and a set of pots. She frowned. Cheeky thing. I will teach you, Auntie Asha declared suddenly. Abeni looked away from the moving images. What? If you wish to go out into the world to find your family and friends, there is little I can do to stop you. I will not keep you here while your heart aches for such a thing. You are, after all, a strong-willed girl. But I insist on teaching you. If at the end of your lessons you still wish to go chasing after storm women and men in goat masks, then you may go. But if you decide otherwise, know that this can still be your home. Abeni's heart leapt. Despite her still queasy stomach, a slow smile crept across her face. The old woman scowled. Do not be so pleased with yourself. What I'm going to teach you isn't the kind of thing you think you must know. Abeni's face fell, then scrunched up in confusion. What did that mean? Auntie Asha put on a rare smile. Don't worry. I promise it will be fulfilling, more than swinging that sword around. With that, she rose again, smirking at the puzzled look on Abeni's face. Picking up the filled bowl, she prepared to go. I must return this magic where it belongs, and have a word with those pots. Get your rest. Tomorrow, you will need it. Wow. Abeni got her wish. She let the pots teach her some magic she thought she wanted it because it tasted so good. It wasn't bitter like that. Like the what was that? The healing person, the healer from her village. It wasn't bitter like that. It was sweet and it was good, and she could have as much as she wanted. And nobody was there to tell her to stop. But she needed somebody there to tell her to stop. Woo-wee. The thing is, she had power within her. She was able to call the magic to her. She just didn't know how to wield it. And that's why she needed the mentor. She needed the old woman. She needed someone who knew the limits and knows how to train her properly, not just all the sweet stuff. She also let her know that magic requests something in return. You don't just get without giving. And she almost gave her whole life away. Thankfully, Auntie Asha saved her again. I wonder how many times did Auntie Asha save her? So many times. And then it was beautiful to see like the closeness, the care that Auntie Asha has for Abeni. Like she truly cares for her. And even when she's being so-called mean, she's not being mean, she's being protective. And she thought she was protecting Abeni by keeping her from the magic that's all around her. But Abeni is a very, very strong-willed, courageous little girl who's missing her family and loves her family very much. And she's going to do whatever. She's not going to stay a little girl forever. And so Auntie Asha is realizing it fully. And she knows it's better to just teach her the magic the proper way rather than have her go exploring her on her own and listening to whatever and just getting herself sick and maybe even harming herself beyond repair. Maybe she could have died eating all of that stuff. Change it. Like her body couldn't have took all of that. But Auntie Asha, I love her already. She's just a character in a book, but I really, really love her. And Abeni's getting her wish. Like I said, she's getting her wish. She's about to get trained the proper way. Not just, I go to the pot, I look in it, it tells me everything. She's about to get trained the proper way. So this is about to get real, real good. Until next chapter, 1.